Good morrow, scholars. Welcome again to Breaking Dawn. Why do I hold the book up like that? Breaking Dawn. So in the last chapter, I talked about a few things I felt, I guess, about the book. Pacing, spacing, ending fatigue, perhaps. I don't know. Anywho, we are on book 3. Bella. Let's see. Personal affection is a luxury you can have only after all your enemies are eliminated. Until then, everyone you love is a hostage, sapping your courage and corrupting your judgment. Orson Scott Card, Empire. I understand the reasoning. I see the logic. But I'm inclined to disagree. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, I suppose. Anyway, preface. Or do you say preface? I say preface. Anyway. No longer just a nightmare, the line of black advanced on us through the icy mist stirred up by their feet. We're going to die, I thought in a panic. I was desperate for the precious one I guarded, but even to think of that was a lapse in attention I could not afford. They ghosted closer, the dark robes billowing slightly with the movement. I saw their hands curl into bone-colored claws. They drifted apart, angling to come at us from all sides. We were outnumbered. It was over. And then, like a burst of light from a flash, the whole scene was different, yet nothing changed. The Volturi still stalked toward us, poised to kill. All that really changed was how the picture looked to me. Suddenly, I was hungry for it. I wanted them to charge. The panic changed to bloodlust as I crouched forward, a smile on my face, and a growl ripped through my bared teeth. Did I read this already somewhere? I'm gonna check. No. No. Someone let me know. Someone let me know. Anyway, we are on chapter 19, Burning. That reminds me of an episode of Digimon. Anyway, the pain was bewildering. Not a word I would have used, but I understand it. Exactly that. I was bewildered. I couldn't understand, couldn't make sense of what was happening. My body tried to reject the pain, and I was sucked again and again into a blackness that cut out whole seconds or maybe even minutes of the agony, making it that much harder to keep up with reality. I tried to separate them. Non-reality was black, and it didn't hurt so much. Reality was red, and it felt like I was being sawed in half, hit by a bus, punched by a prize fighter, trampled by bulls, and submerged in acid all at the same time. That's aptly descriptive, I think. Reality was feeling my body twist and flip when I couldn't possibly move because of the pain. Reality was knowing there was something so much more important than all this torture and not being able to remember what it was. Reality had come on so fast. One moment, everything was as it should have been, surrounded by people I loved, smiles, somehow unlikely as it was. It seemed like I was about to get everything I'd been fighting for. And then one tiny, inconsequential thing had gone wrong. Other than everything else that went wrong, of course. I'd watched as my cup tilted, dark blood spilling out and staining the perfect white, and I'd lurched toward the accident reflexively. I'd seen the other, faster hands, but my body had continued to reach, to stretch. Inside me, something had yanked the opposite direction. Okay. Ripping, breaking, agony. The darkness had taken over, and then washed away to a wave of torture. I couldn't breathe. I had drowned once before, and this was different. It was too hot in my throat. Oh, 'cause the blood, yeah. I remember. Or was I? Pieces of me shattering, snapping, slicing apart. More blackness. Voices, this time, shouting as the pain came back. The placenta must have detached. Who said that? I don't remember. Something sharper than knives ripped through me. Ah, my ear. Where was I? The words, making sense in spite of the other tortures, detached placenta. I knew what that meant. It meant that my baby was dying inside me. Not something I ever thought I would say. Not that I ever had a reason to think that I wouldn't say it. What? Get him out, I screamed to Edward. Why hadn't he done it yet? He can't breathe, do it now. The morphine. He wanted to wait, to give me painkillers while our baby was dying? She's got a point. No, now, I choked, unable to finish. Black spots covered the light in the room as a cold point of new pain stabbed icily into my stomach. It felt wrong. I struggled automatically to protect my womb, my baby, my little Edward Jacob, but I was weak. My lungs ached, oxygen burned away. The pain faded away again, though I clung to it now. My baby, dying. The pain faded away again. Oh, wait, no, I read that. How long had passed? Sorry. I'm a little out of it right now. Seconds or minutes. The pain was gone, numb. I couldn't feel, I couldn't see either. But I could hear. There was air in my lungs again, scraping in rough bubbles up and down my throat. You stay with me now, Bella. Do you hear me? Stay. You're not leaving me. Keep your heart beating. Jacob? Jacob's still here, still trying to save me. Though, to be fair, had he not been there, she probably would have died. Of course I wanted to tell him. Of course I would keep my heart beating. Hadn't I promised them both? I tried to feel my heart, to find it, but I was so lost inside my own body. I couldn't feel the things I should, and nothing felt in the right place. I blinked and found my eyes. I could see the light, not what I was looking for, but better than nothing. Wait, what? As my eyes struggled to adjust, Edward whispered, Renesmee. Renesmee? Not the pale and perfect son of my imagination. I felt a moment of shock, and then a flood of warmth. Renesmee. I willed my lips to move, willed the bubbles of air to turn into whispers on my tongue. I forced my numb hands to reach. Let me give her to me. The light danced, shattering off of Edward's crystal hands. The sparkles were tinged with red, and the blood that covered his skin. What is wrong with me today? Where was I? And more red in his hands, something small and struggling, dripping with blood. He touched the warm body to my weak arms, almost like I was holding her. Her wet skin was hot as Jacob's. My eyes focused. Suddenly everything was absolutely clear. Renesmee did not cry, but she breathed in quick, startled pants. Her eyes were open, her expression so shocked it was almost funny. The little, perfectly round head was covered in a thick layer of matted, bloody curls. Her irises were familiar but astonishing chocolate brown. Under the blood, her skin looked pale, a creamy ivory, all besides her cheeks, which flamed with color. Let's see, where was I? Yeah. Her tiny face was so absolutely perfect that it stunned me. She was even more beautiful than her father. Unbelievable. Impossible. Renesmee, I whispered. So beautiful. The impossible face suddenly smiled, a wide, deliberate smile. Behind the shell-pink lips was a full complement of snowy milk teeth. Ugh. She leaned her head down against my chest, burrowing against the warmth. Her skin was warm and silky, but it didn't give the way mine did. Then there was pain again, just one warm slash of it. I gasped, and she was gone. My angel-faced baby was nowhere. I couldn't see or feel her. No, I wanted to shout, give her back to me. But the weakness was too much. My arms felt like empty rubber hoses for a moment, and then they felt like nothing at all. I couldn't feel them. I couldn't feel me. The blackness rushed over my eyes more solidly than before, like a thick blindfold, firm and fast, covering not just my eyes but also myself with a crushing weight. It was exhausting to push against it. I knew it would be so much easier to give in, to let the blackness push me down to a place where there was no pain and no weariness and no worry and no fear. If it had only been for myself, I wouldn't have been able to struggle for very long. I was only human, with no more than human strength. I had been trying to keep up with the supernatural for too long, like Jacob had said. But this wasn't just about me. If I did the easy thing now, to let the black nothingness erase me, I would hurt them. Edward. My life and his were twisted into a single strand. Cut one, and you cut both. If he were gone, I would not be able to live through that. If I were gone, he wouldn't live through it either. And a world without Edward seemed completely pointless. Edward had to exist. Jacob, who'd said goodbye to me over and over, but kept coming back when I needed him. Jacob, I'd wounded so many times it was criminal. Kinda is. Would I hurt him again? The worst way yet? He'd stayed for me despite everything. Now all he asked was that I stay for him. But it was so dark here that I couldn't see either of their faces. Nothing seemed real. That made it hard not to give up. I kept pushing against the black. Though almost a reflex, I wasn't trying to lift it. I was just resisting, not allowing it to crush me completely. I was an atlas, and the black felt as heavy as a planet. Did you know he actually is holding up the sky? Although I suppose it depends on which particular story you are reading. Anyway. Where was I? I couldn't shoulder it. That reminds me of World War Z. All I could do was not be entirely obliterated. It was sort of the pattern to my life. I'd never been strong enough to deal with the things outside my control, to attack the enemies or outrun them, to avoid the pain. Always human and weak, the only thing I'd ever been able to do was keep going, endure, survive. It had been enough up to this point. It would have to be enough today. I would endure this until help came. I knew Edward would be doing everything he could. He would not give up. Neither would I. I held the blackness of non-existence at bay by inches. It wasn't enough, though, that determination. As the time ground on and the darkness gained by tiny eighths and sixteenths of my inches, I needed something more to draw strength from. I couldn't pull even Edward's face into view, not Jacob's, not Alice's, or Rosalie's, or Charlie's, or Renee's, or Carlyle's, or Esme's. What about Jasper? He did a lot for you. Emmett! It terrified me, and I wondered if it was too late. I felt myself slipping. There was nothing to hold on to. No, I had to survive this. Edward was depending on me. Jacob, Charlie, Alice, Rosalie, Carlyle, Renee, Esme, Renesmee. In my defense, it's just one long sentence, no commas. And then, though I still couldn't see anything, suddenly I could feel something. Like phantom limbs. I don't ever want to feel that. It sounds like it would be obscenely annoying. Where was I? I imagined I could feel my arms again, and in them something small and hard and very warm. Wait, what? Oh. My baby, my little nudger. I had done it, against the odds. I had been strong enough to survive Renesmee. That reminds me, my mom's daughters, when she gave birth to them, they both almost killed her. But the boys, she had almost no problems with. Never mind. Whoa! Did you guys see that on the camera? I don't know. Let me know. I love thunderstorms, but now I'm kind of worried that it'll mess up my computer. Anyway. Where was I? To hold on to her until she was strong enough to live without me. That spot of heat in my phantom arms felt so real. I clutched it closer. It was exactly where my heart should be, holding tight the warm memory of my daughter. I knew that I would be able to fight the darkness as long as I needed to. The warmth beside my heart got more and more real, warmer and warmer, hotter. The heat was so real, it was hard to believe that I was imagining it. Hotter. Uncomfortable now. Too hot. Much, much too hot. Like grabbing the wrong end of a curling iron. I did that once, and then this little skillet, I grabbed it yesterday, and I burnt my hand. I am not a clever man. My automatic response was to drop the scorching thing in my arms, but there is nothing in my arms. My arms were not curled to my chest. My arms were dead things lying somewhere at my side. The heat was inside me. Oh! It took me too long to realize what she was talking about. The burning grew, rose and peaked, and rose again until it surpassed anything I'd ever felt. I felt the pulse behind the fire raging now in my chest, and realized that I'd found my heart again, just in time to wish I never had, to wish I'd embraced the blackness, while I'd still had the chance. I wanted to raise my arms and claw my chest open and rip the heart from it, anything to get rid of this torture. I have problems like that with my chest. Sometimes it feels like I'm being crushed. I want to rip open the cage, the rib cage, just break the sternum, all that stuff. Actually, I'm kind of having that problem now. Where was I? But I couldn't feel my arms, couldn't move one vanished finger. James snapping my leg under his foot, that was nothing. That was a soft place to rest on a feather bed. I'd take that now 100 times, 100 snaps. I'd take it and be grateful. The baby kicking my ribs apart, breaking her way through me piece by piece, that was nothing. That was floating in a pool of cool water. I'd take it 1,000 times, take it and be grateful. The fire blazed hotter, and I wanted to scream, to beg for someone to kill me now before I lived one more second in this pain. But I couldn't move my lips. The weight was still there, pressing on me. Is that the morphine? I realized it wasn't the darkness holding me down. It was my body, so heavy, burying me in the flames that were chewing their way out from my heart now, spreading with impossible pain through my shoulders and stomach, scalding their way up my throat, licking at my face. Why couldn't I move? Why couldn't I scream? This wasn't part of the stories. My mind was unbearably clear, sharpened by the fierce pain, and I saw the answer almost as soon as I could form the questions. The morphine. Okay, see? Although, I'm confused. I don't think that's how morphine works. Oh well. It seemed like a million deaths ago that we'd discussed it, Edward, Carlyle, and I. Edward and Carlyle had hoped that enough painkillers would help fight the pain of the venom. Carlyle had tried with Emmett, but the venom had burned ahead of the medicine, sealing his veins. There hadn't been time for it to spread. I'd kept my face smooth and nodded and thanked my rarely lucky stars that Edward could not read my mind. Because I'd had morphine and venom together in my system before, and I knew the truth. But I knew the numbness of the medicine was completely irrelevant while the venom seared through my veins. But there'd been no way I was going to mention that fact, nothing that would make him more unwilling to change me. I hadn't guessed that the morphine would have this effect, that it would pin me down and gag me, hold me paralyzed while I burned. I guess it's having an adverse reaction to the venom. I knew all the stories. I knew that Carlyle had kept quiet enough to avoid discovery while he burned. I knew that, according to Rosalie, it did no good to scream, and I'd hoped that maybe I could be like Carlyle, that I would believe Rosalie's words and keep my mouth shut, because I knew that every scream that escaped my lips would torment Edward. Now it seemed like a hideous joke that I was getting my wish fulfilled. If I couldn't scream, how could I tell him to kill me? All I wanted was to die, to have never been born. The whole of my existence did not outweigh this pain. Oh, jeez. Was it worth living through it for one more heartbeat? Let me die, let me die, let me die. I'm not mad at her. I'm not mad at the situation. I'm more mad at myself than I am anything else. Okay. And for a never-ending space, that was all there was. Just the fiery torture and my soundless shrieks pleading for death to come. Nothing else, not even time, so that made it infinite, with no beginning and no end, one infinite moment of pain. The only change came when suddenly, impossibly, my pain was doubled. The lower half of my body, deadened since before the morphine, was suddenly on fire too. Some broken connection had been healed, knitted together by the scorching fingers of the flame. The endless burn raged on. It could have been seconds, or days, weeks, or years, but eventually time came to mean something again. 3 things happened together, grew from each other so that I didn't know which came first. Time restarted, the morphine's weight faded, and I got stronger. I could feel the control of my body come back to me in increments, and those increments were my first markers of the time passing. I knew when I was able to twitch my toes and twist my fingers into fists. I knew it, but I did not act on it. Though the fire did not decrease 1 tiny degree, in fact, I began to develop a new capacity for experiencing it, a new sensitivity to appreciate separately each blistering tongue of flame that licked through my veins. I discovered that I could think around it. I could remember why I shouldn't scream. I could remember the reason why I'd committed to enduring this unendurable agony. I could remember that, though it felt impossible now, there was something that might be worth the torture. This happened just in time for me to hold on when the weights left my body. To anyone watching, there would be no change, but for me, as I struggled to keep the screams and thrashing locked up inside my body, where they couldn't hurt anyone else, it felt like I'd gone from being tied to the stake I was burned to gripping that stake to hold myself in the fire. That's a pretty good description. I had just enough strength to lie there unmoving while I was charred alive. My hearing got clearer and clearer, and I could count the frantic pounding beats of my heart to mark the time. I could count the shallow breaths that gasped through my teeth. I could count the low, even breaths that came from somewhere close beside me. These moved slowest, so I concentrated on them. They meant the most time passing. More even than a clock's pendulum, those breaths pulled me through the burning seconds toward the end. I continued to get stronger. My ears. When new noises came, I could listen. There were light footsteps, the whisper of air stirred by an opening door. The footsteps got closer, and I felt pressure against the inside of my wrist. I couldn't feel the coolness of the fingers. The fire blistered away every memory of cool. Still no change? None. The lightest breath against my scorched skin. There's no scent of the morphine left. I know. Bella, can you hear me? I knew, beyond all doubt, that if I unlocked my teeth, I would lose it. I would shriek and screech and writhe and thrash. If I opened my eyes, if I so much as twisted any finger, any change at all would be the end of my control. Bella, love, can you open your eyes? Can you squeeze my hand? Pressure on my fingers. It was harder not to answer this voice, but I stayed paralyzed. I knew that the pain in his voice now was nothing compared to what it could be. Right now, he only feared that I was suffering. Maybe, Carlyle, maybe I was too late. His voice was muffled. It broke on the word late. My resolve wavered for a second. Listen to her heart, Edward. It's stronger than even Emmett's was. I've never heard anything so vital. She'll be perfect. What? Yes, I was right to keep quiet. Carlyle would reassure him. He didn't need to suffer with me. And her spine? Her injuries weren't so much worse than Esme's. The venom will heal her as it did Esme. But she's so still. I must have done something wrong. Or something right, Edward. Son, you did everything I could have and more. I'm not sure I would have had the persistence, the faith it took to save her. Stop berating yourself. Bella is going to be fine. A broken whisper. She must be in agony. We don't know that. She had so much morphine in her system. We don't know the effect it will have on her experience. Faint pressure inside the crease of my elbow. Another whisper. Bella, I love you. Bella, I'm sorry. I wanted so much to answer him, but I wouldn't make his pain worse, not while I had the strength to hold myself still. Through all this, the racking fire went right on burning me, but there was so much space in my head now, room to ponder the conversation, room to wonder what had happened, room to look ahead to the future, with still endless room left over to suffer in. Also room to worry. Where was my baby? Why wasn't she here? Why weren't they talking about her? No, I'm staying right here, Edward whispered, answering an unspoken thought. They'll sort it out. An interesting situation, Carlyle responded, and I thought I'd seen just about everything. I'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it. Something pressed softly to my blistering palm. I'm sure between the 5 of us we can keep it from turning to bloodshed. Edward sighed. I don't know which side to take. I'd love to flog them both. Well, later. I wonder what Bella will think. Whose side she'll take, Carlyle mused. One low, strained chuckle. I'm sure she'll surprise me. She always does. Carlyle's footsteps faded away again, and I was frustrated that there was no further explanation. Were they talking so mysteriously just to annoy me? I went back to counting Edward's breaths to mark the time. 10,943 breaths later, a different set of footsteps whispered into the room, lighter, more rhythmic. Strange that I could distinguish the minute differences between footsteps that I had never been able to hear at all before today. How much longer? Edward asked. It won't be long now, Alice told him. See how clear she's becoming? I can see her so much better. She sighed. Still feeling a little bitter? What? Oh. Yes, thanks so much for bringing it up, she grumbled. You would be mortified, too, if you realized that you were handcuffed by your own nature. I see vampires best because I am one. I see humans okay because I was one. But I can't see these odd half-breeds at all because they're nothing I've experienced. Bah! Focus, Alice. Right, Bella's almost too easy to see now. There was a long moment of silence, and then Edward sighed. It was a new sound, happier. She's really going to be fine, he breathed. Of course she is. You weren't so sanguine 2 days ago. I couldn't see right 2 days ago, but now that she's free of all the blind spots, it's a piece of cake. Could you concentrate for me? On the clock? Give me an estimate? Alice sighed. So impatient. Fine, give me a sec. Quiet breathing. Thank you, Alice. His voice was brighter. How long? Couldn't they at least say it aloud for me? Was that too much to ask? How many more seconds would I burn? 10,000? 20? Another day? 86,400? More than that? She's going to be dazzling. Edward growled quietly. She always has been. Alice snorted. You know what I mean. Look at her. Edward didn't answer, but Alice's word gave me hope that maybe I didn't resemble the charcoal briquette. Sorry. I felt like. It seemed like I must be just a pile of charred bones by now. Every cell in my body had been razed to ash. With a Z, not the... or I guess... Never mind. I heard Alice breeze out of the room. I heard the swish of the fabric she moved, rubbing against itself. I heard the quiet buzz of the light hanging from the ceiling. I heard the faint wind brushing against the outside of the house. I could hear everything. Downstairs, someone was watching a ball game. The Mariners were winning by 2 runs. I wouldn't know. Yeah. It's my turn, I heard Rosalie snap at someone, and there was a low snarl in response. Oh, dear. Hey now. Never mind. Emmett cautioned. Someone hissed. I listened for more, but there was nothing but the game. Baseball was not interesting enough to distract me from the pain, so I listened to Edward's breathing again, counting the seconds. My chest. 21,917.5 seconds later, the pain changed. On the good news side of things, it started to fade from my fingertips and toes, fading slowly, but at least it was doing something new. This had to be it. The pain was on its way out. And then the bad news. The fire in my throat wasn't the same as before. I wasn't only on fire, but I was now parched, too, dry as bone, so thirsty, burning fire and burning thirst. Also bad news. The fire inside my heart got hotter. How was that possible? My heartbeat, already too fast, picked up. The fire drove its rhythm into a new frantic pace. "Carlyle," Edward called. His voice was low but clear. I knew that Carlyle would hear it if he were in or near the house. The fire retreated from my palms, leaving them blissfully pain-free and cool, but it retreated to my heart, which blazed hot as the sun and beat at a furious new speed. Carlyle entered the room, Alice at his side. Their footsteps were so distinct I could even tell that Carlyle was on the right and a foot ahead of Alice. "Listen," Edward told them. The loudest sound in the room was my frenzied heart pounding to the rhythm of the fire. "Ah, it's almost over." My relief at his words was overshadowed by the excruciating pain in my heart. My wrists were free, though, and my ankles. The fire was totally extinguished there. "Soon," Alice agreed eagerly. "I'll get the others. Should I have Rosalie?" "Yes, keep the baby away." "What? No, no." What did he mean, keep my baby away? What was he thinking? My fingers twitched, the irritation breaking through my perfect facade. The room went silent besides the jackhammering of my heart as they all stopped breathing for a second in response. A hand squeezed my wayward fingers. "Bella? Bella, love?" I feel like I say that wrong. Anyway, could I answer him without screaming? I considered that for a moment, and then the fire ripped hotter still through my chest, draining in from my elbows and knees. Better not to chance it. "I'll bring them right up," Alice said, an urgent edge in her tone, and I heard the swish of wind as she darted away, and then, "Oh." My heart took off, beating like helicopter blades, the sound almost a single sustained note. It felt like it would grind through my ribs. The fire flared up in the center of my chest, sucking the last remnants of the flames from the rest of my body to fuel the most scorching blaze yet. The pain was enough to stun me, to break through my iron grip on the stake. My back arched, bowed as if the fire was dragging me upward by my heart. I allowed no other piece of my body to break rank as my torso slumped back to the table. It became a battle inside me, my sprinting heart racing against the attacking fire. Both were losing. The fire was doomed, having consumed everything that was combustible. My heart galloped toward its last breath. What? Beat? What's wrong with me? Anyway, the fire constricted, concentrating inside that one remaining human organ with a final, unbearable surge. The surge was answered by a deep, hollow-sounding thud. My heart stuttered twice, and then thudded quietly again, just once more. There was no sound, no breathing, not even mine. For a moment, the absence of pain was all I could comprehend. And then I opened my eyes and gazed above me in wonder. Whew! Well, that was fun. Sorry, I had to do it. So, let's see. I was going to say something. Now, I know I complained about filler, padding, and whatnot in this book, but I think this was a good chapter. It really shed some light on things, some stuff you might want to know about. So, no real complaints, I suppose, other than what I said last time. Let me know how you guys felt about it. My mom and I, we were talking about it, and she's just glad that I have read the books. I mean, I've read most of them already, so I guess maybe she forgot that I did. I don't know. Can't think of anything else. Sorry for breathing. Let me know how you guys felt about the chapter, how you felt about my reading. Hopefully I'll finish this book soon-ish. Let's see, I think there's about 19 chapters left, so hopefully in like the next 2.5 weeks we can get started on a new series for me to read. I have half a mind to go back and read Twilight. I mean for the channel. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Give me some ideas, some tips. Should I read other supernatural, paranormal, teen romance novels out there? I have one here, I've mentioned it many times, Shiver. A friend of mine from when I used to work at a different store had a copy, and she thought I had stolen it from her because it was the same book, and I told her, no, this one's mine. Well, I think it was my sister's, but anyway. And there's one, sorry, after this I'll be sure to end the video. There's one book, I read it many years ago, well, two, I'll talk about them both maybe, but this one in particular, it had a vampire, it had a bunch of vampires, and he was the ruler of, I don't want to say a country, but he was the leader of a bunch of vampires, and there was this girl who was, I want to say she was betrothed to him. I can't remember, but I know that they found each other. He wanted to marry her. She wasn't sure because there was something off about him, and it was kind of like Beauty and the Beast. She's stuck in his castle or whatever he had at the time, and she starts to fall in love with him. I guess Stockholm Syndrome kind of a thing. And I remember very little of this book. One thing that is clear though is that she was trying to make a rabbit, like stew, and she was trying to surprise him. Even though she was a vegetarian, she wanted to do something nice for him, and she forgot to cut it and pull out all the innards and drain it. So it came out horrifyingly disgusting, even for a vampire, you know what I mean. And he was trying to figure out a way. I think it was like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. Like their families were at war with each other or something, and if they didn't get married, their respective sides would go to war. I remember he tells her that an army marches on its stomach, and she asked what that means, and said that they're vampires, so that would mean wanton destruction on the civilian population, that is to say human. Let me know if you recognize that book at all, if it sounds familiar to you. And there was another one, it was one my sister read, and it also had someone who was obsessed with a human baby, and she was a vampire. And oddly enough, she was the daughter of the main heroine of the story, and she gets, something happened and it turned her into a vampire, and she was accelerated, her aging was accelerated, and she wanted this person's baby for some reason, and I can't remember why. And she kidnaps the heroine's best friend, some guy, we'll call him the Jacob of that series, but this book came out many years before Twilight was ever a thing. And yeah, she leaves him for dead, drowning in the ocean, completely broken. I forget, I think they saved the baby and they got her back to her mother. I remember at one point she had the guy call the main character saying that she wanted the baby to trade, the baby for her friend's life. And she said that she would, but she couldn't yet because the doctors were still testing him, and they would have to wait a couple of days before they would release him from the hospital. And the girl says she didn't believe him, but she said it's fine as long as she brings the baby. And then, that happened. And then her friend gets pretty much killed, and she, by this point, the heroine, had been turned into a vampire, and so she turns him into a vampire, even though she didn't want to do that to him in any way, because danger, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. If you happen to remember, if you ever read those books and you remember their titles, please let me know. I kind of want to look for them and read them again, maybe for the channel. Maybe read a whole bunch of vampire fiction, I suppose. I've never read anything by Anne Rice. Is that her name? Yeah. Yeah. Right? Or am I thinking of the wrong person? I always confuse Anne Rice and Agatha Christie. I don't know why. Anyway, until next time. Goodbye, everybody. Sorry for the ramble.